On the morning of March 5, 1945, at precisely 9 a.m., Rifleman Bhanbhagta Gurung found himself crouched low within the thick jungle undergrowth near Snowdon East Hill, as Japanese machine gun fire ripped violently through the bamboo directly above where his section had taken position. He had reached the age of 24 and had already managed to survive the absolutely brutal first Chindita expedition some 2 years prior. However, just 3 months earlier, something had happened that stripped him of his corporal rank for an error that wasn't even of his own making. B Company, which belonged to the 3rd Battalion of the 2nd Gurkha Rifles, had just witnessed the devastating sight of 45 men falling in their attempt to capture this very same hill only the previous day. At this moment, the Japanese 54th Division controlled the high ground, fortified with interconnected bunkers and well-positioned foxholes. The casualty numbers painted an extremely grim picture. Out of the 3,000 Gurkhas who had crossed into Burma during Operation Longcloth back in February 1943, a mere 2,182 had actually returned home. That meant 818 men were lost, representing a staggering 27% casualty rate. Bhanbhagta had counted himself among the fortunate ones who successfully made it back across the Chindwin River that spring, skeletal in appearance and barely alive after suffering from both malaria and dysentery. He had earned his promotion to Naik during that nightmarish expedition. Corporal, that's what he had become. He had led men straight through Japanese-controlled territory for a full 3 months, setting off dynamite on railway lines and constantly evading enemy patrols. Then September 1944 arrived. His platoon commander issued him orders to secure a particular hill during operations taking place in the Arakan region. Bhanbhagta successfully took the hill exactly as he had been ordered to do. The problem, however, was that it turned out to be the wrong hill entirely. The lieutenant had provided him with incorrect coordinates, yet he allowed Bhanbhagta to take the full blame for the mistake. The result was demotion back to rifleman status and a transfer to B Company in complete disgrace. Now here he was once again in Burma, back in the suffocating jungle. The 25th Indian Division desperately needed the Gurkhas to clear Snowdon East so that the 82nd West African Division could successfully evacuate their wounded through the on-pass. The Japanese forces had managed to retake the hill during the night of March 4th. Every possible approach route was thoroughly covered by interlocking fields of fire, including mortars, light machine guns, and grenades. There was even a sniper positioned in a tree approximately 75 yards to the south, who had already succeeded in killing 3 men from Bhanbhagta's section. The section commander had been killed. 10 men now lay pinned down in the elephant grass, completely unable to move in any direction, either forward or back. The sniper just kept firing continuously. Each distinct crack of his rifle meant that another Gurkha soldier might very well die. Bhanbhagta found it impossible to get a clear shot while remaining in the prone position. The angle simply wasn't right. He would have to stand up, becoming fully exposed to enemy fire. This would put him under direct fire from the sniper, from the machine gun bunker positioned on the ridge, and from at least 4 foxholes that they could clearly identify. His fellow soldiers thought he had lost his mind. Some of them had personally witnessed what happened to men who made the decision to stand up during an active firefight. The 14th Army's ongoing push toward Mandalay was grinding forward relentlessly, but the cost was being paid in blood. Every single hill, every ridge, every bunker had to be taken. The Japanese 54th Division was not retreating with any ease whatsoever. They had fortified Snowdon East using the same brutal efficiency they had demonstrated at Imphal and Kohima during the previous year. Bhanbhagta performed a quick check of his Lee Enfield rifle. He had grenades ready. His kukri hung at his side, the traditional curved blade that every Gurkha carried with them, the knife that made Japanese soldiers genuinely nervous. But right at this moment, none of those weapons would matter at all if the sniper continued picking them off one by one. Did Gurung's rock actually kill more Japanese soldiers than his grenades did? Please take a moment to like this video. It truly helps share these incredible stories, and don't forget to subscribe. Back to Burma and the unfolding events, the decision came incredibly fast. Bhanbhagta pushed himself up to his feet. Machine gun bullets snapped past his head with terrifying proximity. He ignored them completely, located the sniper within his sights, and squeezed the trigger firmly. The sniper tumbled from the tree, already dead before his body hit the ground below. The section immediately started moving again, pushing steadily toward the objective. When they reached a point 20 yards from the crest, the Japanese forces opened up with absolutely everything they had. The Gurkhas hit the dirt once more. Same fundamental problem, just a different position on the hill. Bhanbhagta didn't wait for orders this time around. He was completely done waiting. Done being the man who received blame for other people's mistakes. Done watching his mates die for hills in Burma. He grabbed hold of 2 grenades and charged directly at the nearest foxhole. The Japanese soldiers inside never even saw him coming. Both grenades went in. Both men were killed instantly. He kept running straight to the next position. No grenades remained this time, just his bayonet ready. Close quarters combat, brutal and fast. The Japanese soldier died within seconds. 2 more foxholes still maintained clear lines of fire on his section's position. Bhanbhagta went after them alone, armed with bayonet and grenades. The same deadly pattern repeated itself. Rush forward, kill, move to the next target. The entire time this was happening, a light machine gun positioned in a bunker at the north tip of the ridge was hammering away at him. Point-blank fire, continuous and relentless. The gunner should have killed him 10 times over by any reasonable calculation, but Bhanbhagta just kept moving, kept killing. 4 foxholes cleared successfully, 4 positions now taken, but that bunker remained operational. And it wasn't only holding up his platoon's advance. Another Gurkha platoon that was advancing from the west was also pinned down by this same gun. For the 5th time that morning, Bhanbhagta charged forward, completely alone. The bunker was solidly built, constructed of concrete, and built directly into the hillside itself. He managed to reach the roof and leaped onto it. His last fragmentation grenades were already gone, completely used up. He pulled out 2 number 77 smoke grenades, the white phosphorus type that the Chindits had routinely used for signalling purposes. He shoved them forcefully through the bunker slit opening. Thick smoke billowed up inside the enclosed space. 2 Japanese soldiers stumbled out, partially blinded and coughing violently. Bhanbhagta's kukri flashed twice in quick succession. Both men dropped dead, but the machine gunner was still inside, still firing at number 4 platoon's position. The bunker interior was cramped and dark, now filled with smoke. Bhanbhagta crawled in through the narrow slit. He could barely see anything, could barely breathe in the thick smoke. The gunner was right there, positioned only 3 feet away, his hand still gripping the Type 92 machine gun. Bhanbhagta reached for his kukri, but there was no room to swing it properly. The bunker ceiling was far too low. The walls pressed in too close. He needed something else, something different. His hand found a rock on the bunker floor, about the size of a baseball, heavy and solid. The gunner began turning toward him. Bhanbhagta swung once, then twice. The gunner stopped moving entirely. The machine gun finally went silent. Snowdon East now belonged to the Gurkhas. Bhanbhagta grabbed hold of the Type 92 and shoved it toward the bunker entrance opening. He yelled out for the nearest Bren gunner and 2 riflemen to join him. They scrambled up the hill and into the position. The machine gun was still warm to the touch, still loaded and ready. The Japanese had kept it exceptionally well maintained, and now it belonged to the Gurkhas. Bhanbhagta positioned the Bren gunner to effectively cover the northern approach. The riflemen took up positions on the flanks. Most of B Company's objective had been cleared successfully, but the Japanese forces weren't finished fighting yet. Enemy soldiers who had been driven off the ridge were now regrouping at the base of the northern slope. Bhanbhagta could hear them clearly through the smoke and continuing gunfire. Officers were shouting orders loudly, equipment was rattling. They were massing their forces for a counterattack. This was standard Japanese tactical doctrine. Hit back immediately, while the attackers remained disorganized. The Gurkhas had perhaps 5 minutes before the assault would come crashing in. The counterattack hit extremely hard. Waves of Japanese infantry came charging uphill with bayonets already fixed and grenades gripped in their hands. The Bren gun shattered the attack. The captured Type 92 joined in the defensive fire. Bhanbhagta worked his Lee Enfield smoothly, picking targets as they appeared through the jungle vegetation. The Japanese came forward in groups of 5 or 6 men, disciplined and utterly determined. They knew this ground intimately. They had held it for less than 24 hours total, but they had fortified it exceptionally well. The Gurkhas held firm. The bunker position gave them the critical advantage now. What had been a death trap just 30 minutes earlier was now functioning as a fortress. Every Japanese soldier who attempted to retake the ridge ran directly into concentrated fire from 3 different weapons. Bodies began piling up at the base of the hill. The enemy forces took heavy losses and eventually fell back. The counterattack broke apart. Snowdon East was now secure. By noon that day, the hill belonged entirely to the 25th Division. The road to the on-pass was finally open. The 82nd West African Division could now evacuate their wounded soldiers. B Company counted up their casualties carefully. 45 men had gone down in the effort to take Snowdon East. 45 Gurkhas killed or wounded, but 66 Japanese soldiers lay dead across the hill. This was the brutal mathematics of infantry combat in Burma. Trade blood for ground, hold what you take, move forward again tomorrow. Bhanbhagta's company commander found him still in the captured bunker. The officer looked at the dead Japanese gunner lying there, looked at the rock still on the floor, looked at Bhanbhagta's kukri, unused and perfectly clean in its sheath. He didn't ask any questions. He simply nodded. Sometimes the weapon you needed wasn't the one you had trained with. Sometimes it was simply whatever you could reach in the darkness. The story spread through the entire battalion by evening. The rifleman who had cleared 5 positions, completely alone, who had killed a sniper while standing upright under machine gun fire, who had used grenades, bayonet, kukri, and finally a rock to take down a concrete bunker. Some of the men who had known him since the Chindit operation weren't surprised at all. They had seen what Bhanbhagta could do when situations went badly wrong. Others were hearing his name for the very first time. What they didn't know was the weight he had been carrying since September. The demotion, the transfer, the knowledge that he had done exactly what his platoon commander had ordered and still taken all the blame. That kind of injustice burns deep. Bhanbhagta hadn't been trying to prove anything on Snowdon East. He had been trying to keep his section alive. But somewhere during those 5 charges, something fundamental had shifted. The dishonour of the demotion meant less now. The men who had followed him up the hill knew exactly what he was worth. The kukri was the weapon that truly defined the Gurkhas. 18 inches of curved steel. One edge sharp enough to take a man's head clean off with a single powerful stroke. British officers absolutely loved telling stories about Gurkha soldiers and their knives. The Japanese feared them deeply. Every enemy soldier fighting in Burma knew precisely what a kukri could do in close combat situations. But inside that bunker, cramped and filled with smoke, the blade Bhanbhagta had carried since basic training proved useless. No room to swing properly. No space to manoeuvre effectively. The rock worked better, plain and simple. Night fell over Snowdon East. The Gurkhas dug in properly, strung wire, posted sentries. The Japanese 54th Division was still out there somewhere in the jungle, still fighting. The war in Burma had turned in favour of the Allies, but it was far from over. General Slim's 14th Army was pushing steadily toward Rangoon, and every division had a specific role to play. The 25th Division's job was to tie down Japanese units in the Arakan while the main offensive drove south through central Burma. Bhanbhagta sat in the bunker he had captured, and methodically cleaned his rifle. His hands remained steady. The adrenaline had worn off completely hours ago. Now came the exhaustion, the heavy weight of what he had done. 5 positions captured, at least 9 Japanese soldiers dead by his hand, possibly more. The math became fuzzy during combat. What mattered was the hill was secure, and most of his section had survived the day. The question everyone was asking seemed simple enough. How does a man charge 5 fortified positions while under continuous machine gun fire and live to tell about it? Bhanbhagta didn't have an answer ready. Luck, perhaps. Timing. The Japanese gunner's aim being off by mere inches. Divine intervention, if you believed in such things. He had done what needed doing and somehow hadn't died. That was enough for now. But the war wasn't finished with Rifleman Bhanbhagta Gurung just yet. March 5th, 1945 was just one day, one hill, one battle, in a campaign that had been grinding through Burma for 3 full years. What happened next would ultimately determine whether anyone beyond B Company ever heard his name. The 3rd Battalion of the 2nd Gurkha Rifles had a history stretching all the way back to 1815. The Sirramur Rifles, as they were originally known. They had earned their first battle honour at Bharatpur in 1826, fought during the Indian Mutiny, served on the Western Front during the First World War. Now they were fighting in Burma, part of the largest British Indian force ever assembled anywhere in Southeast Asia. Over 500,000 men, fighting against a Japanese army that had conquered Malaya, Singapore, and most of Burma in less than 6 months back in 1942. Bhanbhagta had joined the regiment in 1940 when he was just 18 years old, recruited from Baisari, a small village in the Gurkha district of Nepal. Hill country, poor farming land. Most young men from his village either joined the army or worked the same terraced fields their families had farmed for generations upon generations. The British paid well by local standards. Gurkha soldiers sent money home regularly. It was steady work if you managed to survive. Basic training at the depot in India lasted a full 4 months. Marksmanship with the Lee Enfield rifle, bayonet drill, hand-to-hand combat with the kukri, physical conditioning that broke weaker recruits completely. The instructors pushed relentlessly until men dropped. Only the toughest candidates made it through successfully. Bhanbhagta passed easily. He was built for this kind of life. Compact, strong, possessing the kind of endurance that came naturally from growing up in the Himalayan foothills, where every trip to the next village meant climbing a mountain. By early 1943, he had made Lance Naik, Lance Corporal in British terms. Then came Operation Longcloth, Brigadier Ord Wingate's experiment in long-range penetration. Take 3,000 men deep into Japanese-held Burma, cut railway lines, destroy communications infrastructure, prove that British and Indian troops could operate effectively behind enemy lines. The Chindits, named after the Chinta, the lion-like creatures that guarded Burmese temples. Bhanbhagta's column crossed the Chindwin River on February 14, 1943. They marched over 1,000 miles through dense jungle, blew up bridges, ambushed Japanese patrols, lived entirely on airdrop supplies, and whatever they could forage from the land. The operation lasted 3 brutal months. When it finally ended, 818 men were dead, missing, or captured. Of those who actually made it back, only 600 were fit for further military service. The rest were invalided out permanently. Malaria, dysentery, exhaustion, severe malnutrition. Some men weighed 30 pounds less than when they had crossed the border. Bhanbhagta survived it all. He got promoted to Naik during the operation for leading his section through an ambush successfully. Full corporal, that promotion meant something significant. Recognition that he could handle responsibility under fire. The Chindit veterans formed a tight group. They had seen things most infantry soldiers never experienced: starvation, disease, watching wounded men die because evacuation was simply impossible. The regiment respected them deeply. Then came the Arakan campaign In late 1944, the 3rd Battalion was part of the 25th Division's advance down the coast. September 19th, Bhanbhagta's platoon commander gave him orders to secure a specific hill. Bhanbhagta took his section up to the designated coordinates. They held the position, dug in properly, waited for the rest of the company to join them. When the company commander arrived, he was absolutely furious. Wrong hill entirely. The battalion commander demanded answers. Someone had to take the blame for this mistake. The platoon commander pointed directly at Bhanbhagta, said the Naik had misunderstood the orders completely. Bhanbhagta tried to explain. He had gone to the exact coordinates he had been given. The lieutenant had made the mistake, not him. It didn't matter at all. The officer's word carried far more weight than a Gurkha NCO's ever would. Bhanbhagta was formally charged with neglect of duty, stripped of his rank, reduced to rifleman, transferred to B Company. It was the kind of injustice that broke some men completely. Bhanbhagta kept quiet, accepted the punishment without complaint. He knew the truth. His section knew the truth. That had to be enough. He had been a corporal for less than 2 years. Now he was back where he had started. Rifleman. No authority, no respect from men who didn't know his record. Just another Gurkha in a company full of them. The demotion followed him like a shadow. Other riflemen who had served less time, seen less combat, they were getting promoted while Bhanbhagta stayed at the very bottom. February 1945 rolled around. 2 years since Operation Longcloth began. The 3rd Battalion landed at WWII and pushed inland toward Tamandu. The Japanese 54th Division was dug in across the high ground. Every hill was a fortress. Every advance caused casualties. B Company drew Snowdon East. March 4th, the Japanese retook the hill at night. 45 Gurkhas went down, trying to hold it. March 5th, B Company got orders to take it back, regardless of cost. Bhanbhagta's section was in the lead element. That's where the story really began. Not with the rock or the kukri or the bunker assault. It started with a rifleman who had nothing left to prove, but everything to lose. The question, hanging over Snowdon East, wasn't just tactical in nature. Could the Gurkhas hold the position against Japanese counterattacks? Would reinforcements arrive before the enemy massed enough force to push them off the ridge? What happened in the next 48 hours would determine whether Bhanbhagta's actions on March 5th mattered at all. The 3rd Battalion held Snowdon East for the next full week. Japanese patrols probed their defences every single night. Mortar fire, snipers, small-scale attacks designed to test the Gurkhas' resolve. None of them succeeded. B Company had paid far too high a price for that hill to give it back now. They strengthened the bunkers, improved the firing positions, turned the ridge into exactly what the Japanese had built before losing it. By mid-March, the 25th Division was pushing deeper into the Arakan region. The Japanese 54th Division was falling back gradually, not retreating in panic, but conducting a fighting withdrawal. They would hold a position for 2 or 3 days, inflict maximum casualties, then pull back to the next defensive line. It was the same pattern they had used throughout Burma. Make the British pay dearly for every mile gained. Bhanbhagta's company commander wrote up the action report from Snowdon East. The details were highly specific. Times, locations, casualties, the exact number of enemy positions cleared. Witnesses confirmed every single part of the story. The sniper kill, the 4 foxholes, the bunker assault, the rock. Officers who had served in Burma for 3 years had seen plenty of bravery in combat. This was different somehow. 5 positions cleared by 1 man while under continuous fire. It met the standard for the highest recognition possible. The recommendation went up the chain of command. Battalion commander, brigade commander, division commander, each level added their endorsement. By April, the paperwork reached India Command. The citation was drafted in formal language, clinical and precise, every action described in passive voice. The violence reduced to bureaucratic prose. Rifleman Bhanbhagta Gurung had displayed outstanding bravery and complete disregard for his own safety. His courageous clearing of 5 enemy positions single-handedly was decisive in capturing the objective. The Victoria Cross, Britain's highest military award for gallantry in the face of the enemy. Established in 1856 by Queen Victoria herself, only 10 Gurkhas had received it during the entire Second World War up to this point. The medal was made from bronze taken from Russian cannons captured during the Crimean War, or so the story went. Some historians disputed the origin, but the symbolism remained powerful. The cross itself was simple, plain, with no elaborate design, just a cross with a crown and lion above it, and the words, "For Valour," underneath. The official announcement came in the London Gazette on June 1st, 1945. By then, the war in Europe was already over. Germany had surrendered on May 8th. Japan was still fighting, but the end was clearly coming. American forces were closing in on the home islands. The British 14th Army had taken Rangoon on May 3rd. Burma was nearly liberated. The Japanese were pulling back to Thailand and Malaya, trying desperately to consolidate what remained of their Southeast Asian empire. Bhanbhagta didn't know anything about the Victoria Cross recommendation until weeks after Snowdon East. Officers didn't tell enlisted men about award nominations. Too many things could go wrong. The paperwork could get lost. Higher command might downgrade it to a lesser medal. Better to wait until it was official. He kept doing his job. Patrols, guard duty, cleaning weapons. The same routine every infantry soldier followed between battles. The 3rd Battalion pushed south through April and May. The Japanese resistance was crumbling, but still dangerous. Ambushes, booby traps, the occasional firefight when a Japanese unit decided to make a stand. Bhanbhagta's section took casualties. Not as heavy as Snowdon East, but enough to remind everyone the war wasn't finished yet. 1 man lost to a landmine, another to a sniper. 2 wounded by grenade fragments. The grinding attrition of infantry combat continued. June brought monsoon rains. The jungle turned into a swamp. Rivers flooded. Roads became impassable. Military operations slowed to a crawl. The 14th Army consolidated positions and prepared for the next phase. The invasion of Malaya was being planned. Operation Zipper, an amphibious assault that would put British forces on the Malay Peninsula and drive towards Singapore. The 3rd Battalion would be part of it. Then came August, atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Soviet declaration of war against Japan. Emperor Hirohito's radio broadcast on August 15th. The war was over. Japan had surrendered. After 6 years of global conflict, it was finally done. The men of B Company heard the news in a base camp south of Rangoon. Some cheered loudly, others just sat quietly, trying to process it all. They had survived. They were going home. Bhanbhagta's company commander called him in 3 days later, told him about the Victoria Cross, explained what it meant. The presentation would happen in India, probably at division headquarters. King George VI would present the medals in person once Bhanbhagta got back to England, but that might take months. The war was over, but the army still moved slowly. Demobilization, repatriation, processing thousands of men through the system. The news spread through the battalion immediately. The rifleman who had been demoted 6 months ago was getting the Victoria Cross. Some of the older NCOs who had known him since the Chindit operation weren't surprised at all. They had seen what he could do. Others were learning his story for the very first time. The rock in the bunker became legendary. British officers told it at mess dinners. Gurkha soldiers passed it around their own networks. By September, everyone in the regiment knew. But Bhanbhagta had a problem. His mother was widowed and frail back in Baisari. His wife was young and needed support. He had responsibilities in Nepal that the army couldn't fulfill. The company commander tried hard to convince him to stay in, offered to restore his Naik rank immediately, suggested he could make Havildar within a year. The Victoria Cross changed everything. He could write his own ticket now. Bhanbhagta said no, politely but firmly. He had done his duty. 4 years of service, Operation Longcloth, the Arakan campaign, Snowdon East, it was enough. He wanted to go home. The army accepted his decision. When he was discharged in January 1946, they restored his Naik rank and gave him the honorary rank of Havildar. The paperwork was clean, an honourable discharge, the Victoria Cross citation officially approved. The presentation ceremony happened before he left India. Division parade ground. Full dress uniform. Officers lined up. The general pinned the medal to Bhanbhagta's chest and shook his hand. Photographers took pictures. The images would appear in British newspapers later. The Gurkha who used a rock to kill a Japanese machine gunner. Good for morale, good for recruiting. Proof that Britain's colonial troops were fierce warriors. What the newspapers didn't mention was what came next. Bhanbhagta travelled to London in 1946 for the official Victoria Cross presentation. King George VI conducted the ceremony at Buckingham Palace. Dozens of servicemen lined up to receive medals. Army, Navy, Air Force, British, Commonwealth, Gurkhas. The war had produced thousands of acts of bravery, but only a handful earned the Victoria Cross. Bhanbhagta stood in line with men who had done extraordinary things under fire. Each one had a story. His involved a rock. The king pinned the medal to his uniform and said a few words. Bhanbhagta didn't speak much English. The translator conveyed the king's congratulations. The ceremony lasted less than 5 minutes per recipient. Efficient, formal, very British. Photographs were taken, paperwork was completed. Then Bhanbhagta was free to return to Nepal. He had seen London, met the king, received Britain's highest military honour. Now he wanted to go home. Baisari hadn't changed at all. Same terraced fields, same stone houses, same mountains rising in every direction. The village had sent men to serve in the British Army for generations. Most came back, some didn't. Bhanbhagta was one of the lucky ones who returned in one piece. The Victoria Cross didn't mean much to villagers who had never heard of it. What mattered was he had sent money home during the war, and now he was back to help work the family land. Life in Baisari followed rhythms that hadn't changed in centuries. Plant rice in the monsoon season, harvest in autumn, tend livestock, repair terraces. The work was hard but predictable. Nothing like Burma. No snipers, no Japanese, no officers giving contradictory orders. Just a daily routine of subsistence farming in the Himalayan foothills. Bhanbhagta settled into it easily. His wife had waited through 4 years of war. They had married young before he had enlisted. She had managed the household while he was gone, relying on his army pay and help from extended family. Now they could start a proper life together. 3 sons came over the next decade. All of them would eventually join the 2nd Gurkha Rifles, following their father into British service. The tradition continued. The regiment didn't forget Bhanbhagta. They invited him back several times over the years. Malaya in the 1950s, when the battalion was fighting communist insurgents during the emergency. Hong Kong in the 1960s. England in the 1970s. Each visit was ceremonial. The Victoria Cross holder, living proof of Gurkha courage. The army paid for everything: transportation, accommodation, meals. They treated him well. In 1994, the 2nd Gurkha Rifles amalgamated with other regiments, budget cuts, downsizing, the end of an era. The Sirmur Rifles ceased to exist as an independent unit after 179 years. March 5th Tamandu Day had been celebrated as a regimental holiday since 1945. After amalgamation, the tradition faded. New regiments had their own histories, their own heroes. Bhanbhagta's story became part of the past. The year 2000 brought one final honour. The British Army named a training facility at Catterick Garrison after him, the Bhanbhagta Gurung Block, a permanent reminder for young Gurkha recruits going through basic training. This is what one of your own did in Burma. This is the standard. Every recruit would walk past that sign and know the story. The rifleman who cleared 5 Japanese positions with grenades, bayonet, kukri, and a rock. Bhanbhagta developed asthma in his later years. The condition worsened gradually. By 2004, he was housebound, living with his youngest son in Gurkha district. The same hills he had grown up in, the same mountains he had left 64 years earlier to join the army. He was 86 years old. The last years were difficult. His breathing deteriorated. Simple activities became exhausting. But he had his family around him. His sons, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. March 1st, 2008. Bhanbhagta Gurung died at his son's house. The news reached the Gurkha Museum in Winchester, England, within days. Obituaries appeared in British newspapers, The Telegraph, The Times. Military historians wrote tributes. The last of the Burma Victoria Cross recipients was gone. Only a handful of Second World War Gurkha VCs had still been alive. Now there was one fewer. His Victoria Cross went to the Gurkha Museum. The medal sits in a display case alongside 9 others earned by Gurkha soldiers during the Second World War. Visitors can see it, read the citation, look at photographs of a young Rifleman Gurung in uniform. The museum preserves the story, makes sure new generations understand what happened on Snowdon East. But the rock isn't there. No one kept it. Why would they? It was just a rock. Baseball-sized, heavy enough to kill a man in close quarters. Dark with blood when Bhanbhagta dropped it in the bunker. Probably still on the floor when B Company moved out days later. Maybe a Japanese burial detail found it when they recovered their dead. Maybe it's still there, buried under 60 years of jungle growth on a hill in Burma that's now called Myanmar. The thing about improvised weapons is they disappear. Grenades explode. Bayonets stay with the rifle. Kukris get passed down through families. But a rock is just a rock until it saves your life or ends someone else's. Then it becomes something more. A tool, a weapon, a piece of history that no one thought to preserve because no one imagined it mattered. The men who served with Bhanbhagta on Snowdon East are all gone now. The last veteran of B Company died years ago. No one alive remembers watching him stand up under sniper fire. No one saw him charge those foxholes firsthand. No one crawled into that bunker behind him. The story survives through official records, war diaries, Victoria Cross citations, museum displays, second-hand accounts written by people who weren't there. But here's what the records can't capture: the weight of a decision made in less than a second. Bhanbhagta standing up under machine gun fire. That moment when survival instinct screams to stay down and training says eliminate the threat. Most men freeze in place. Some run, a few attack. Bhanbhagta attacked, not because he was fearless. Fear is what keeps soldiers alive, but because staying pinned meant watching more of his section die. The mathematics were simple. One life against many. He chose to risk the one. Military historians study these moments, try to quantify courage, break it down into factors: training, leadership, unit cohesion, battlefield conditions. All of it matters. But none of it fully explains why one man charges a machine gun bunker while others stay in cover. The Victoria Cross citations from Burma read like a catalogue of impossible actions. Men who should have died but didn't. Bhanbhagta's was one of hundreds, each one a small miracle of survival. The Gurkhas had a reputation that preceded them into battle. The Japanese knew about the kukri, knew about Gurkha aggression in close combat. British propaganda played it up. The fearless hillmen from Nepal, natural warriors, born fighters. The reality was more complicated. Gurkha soldiers were professionals, well-trained, disciplined. They fought effectively because the British Army invested in their training and treated them better than most colonial troops. But the mythology persisted. Useful for morale, useful for intimidation. Bhanbhagta's action on Snowdon East fit the narrative perfectly. The lone Gurkha charging Japanese positions, killing with traditional weapons, using a rock when modern weapons failed. It was the kind of story that newspapers loved. Primitive warrior defeats modern military with Stone Age tactics. Never mind that he had also used grenades, a rifle, and a bayonet. The rock was what people remembered. The rock made it exotic, made it foreign, made it other. But strip away the mythology, and what remains is infantry combat at its most basic. Close quarters, poor visibility, weapons malfunctioning or running out of ammunition, soldiers improvising with whatever they can grab. The rock wasn't primitive, it was practical. Bhanbhagta needed to kill a man in a cramped space where his kukri was useless. The rock worked, simple as that. Any soldier in the same situation would have done the same thing. The Burma campaign produced this kind of fighting constantly. Jungle warfare, bunker assaults, hand-to-hand combat in conditions where visibility was measured in feet. The Japanese built their defensive positions into the terrain. Bunkers covered by jungle growth, foxholes connected by trenches, interlocking fields of fire that turned every approach into a killing zone. Taking these positions required infantry to close with the enemy, get inside grenade range, clear each position individually. Brutal, slow, costly, the 14th Army lost thousands of men in Burma. Disease killed more than combat. Malaria, dysentery, typhus. The jungle was as much an enemy as the Japanese. Soldiers rotated out of frontline units regularly just to recover from illness. The lucky ones got evacuated to hospitals in India. The unlucky ones died in aid stations or on the march. Medical care improved as the campaign progressed, but the early years were a nightmare. Men died from infected cuts, dehydration, starvation when supply lines broke down. Bhanbhagta survived all of it. Operation Longcloth, the Arakan campaign, Snowdon East. 4 years in Burma, and he came home intact. No serious wounds, no permanent disabilities. The asthma came later, probably unrelated to military service. He was extraordinarily lucky. Most Chindit veterans never fully recovered from the first expedition. The physical toll was too great. Bhanbhagta walked away and went back to farming. That alone put him in a minority. The 2nd Gurkha Rifles recruited heavily from the Gurung ethnic group, hill tribes from central Nepal. The British had specific recruiting standards: height minimums, physical fitness tests, educational requirements. They selected the best candidates and trained them to British Army standards. The result was a highly effective infantry force that served throughout the empire: India, Malaya, Hong Kong, Cyprus, the Falklands. Wherever Britain needed reliable troops, the Gurkhas went. The relationship was transactional. Nepal allowed recruitment in exchange for British support and military training for Nepalese officers. Gurkha soldiers earned good wages by Nepalese standards and sent money home. Britain got tough, disciplined infantry who performed well in difficult conditions. Both sides benefited. The arrangement lasted over 200 years. It continues today in modified form. The British Army still recruits Gurkhas, smaller numbers now, different terms of service, but the tradition survives. Bhanbhagta's 3 sons all joined the 2nd Gurkha Rifles. They followed him into British service, served their terms, came home. The cycle repeated itself. His grandson became a captain in the Royal Gurkha Rifles. The family tradition spanning 3 generations, each one carrying the knowledge that their father or grandfather had earned the Victoria Cross. That kind of legacy creates pressure. Live up to the standard, match the achievement, or at least don't embarrass the family name. None of them earned a Victoria Cross. Very few soldiers do. The medal is rare by design, only awarded for the most extreme acts of valour. Bhanbhagta's sons served honourably. That was enough. They didn't need to single-handedly assault 5 enemy positions to prove their worth. They did their jobs, came home, raised families, the same pattern their father had followed. In 2020, Bhanbhagta's grandson visited the Gurkha Museum, Captain Bhuwani Gurung. He saw his grandfather's Victoria Cross for the first time. The medal his family had known about for 75 years, but never actually seen. It had been donated to the museum after Bhanbhagta's death, preserved for history. The museum staff arranged a private viewing. Photographs were taken. The circle closed. The question that remains is simpler than it seems. What made March 5th, 1945 different from any other day? Why did Bhanbhagta survive when so many others died? Was it skill, luck, divine intervention, or just the random chaos of combat where bullets miss by inches and grenades land exactly where they need to? The answer matters less than the fact that he lived to tell the story. Someone had to survive. It happened to be him. That's the nature of war: arbitrary, brutal, occasionally heroic, mostly just violent and sad. But there's one more piece to the story that changes everything: the demotion. That's the piece everyone overlooks when they tell Bhanbhagta's story. They focus on the rock, the bunker, the 5 positions cleared under fire. But the real story started 4 months earlier, when a lieutenant made a mistake and let a rifleman take the fall. That injustice was still fresh on March 5th, still burning. The kind of anger that doesn't fade quickly. Military discipline depends on hierarchy. Officers give orders, enlisted men follow them. When something goes wrong, blame flows downward. It's not fair, but it's how armies work. Bhanbhagta understood this. He had served long enough to know the system, but understanding doesn't make it easier to accept. He had done exactly what he was told and still lost his rank. That stays with a man. The platoon commander who gave the wrong coordinates survived the war. Made captain, served another 5 years before retiring. His career wasn't affected by the incident. Why would it be? He had successfully deflected blame onto a Gurkha NCO who had no political connections and limited ability to defend himself. The system protected officers, always had. Bhanbhagta knew this too. He didn't fight the charges, didn't appeal, just took the demotion and moved to a new company. Some historians argue the demotion motivated Bhanbhagta's actions on Snowdon East, trying to prove his worth, reclaim his honour, show everyone he had been wrongly punished. Maybe. But that analysis imposes Western concepts of individual achievement onto a man from a completely different culture. Bhanbhagta came from a village where community mattered more than personal glory. His actions were about keeping his section alive, not personal vindication. The Victoria Cross didn't erase the demotion. It couldn't. The records show both. Promoted to Naik in 1943, reduced to rifleman in September 1944. Earned Victoria Cross in March 1945. The army eventually restored his rank, but the gap remained. 6 months as a disgraced rifleman. That period shaped everything that came after. Without the demotion, Bhanbhagta might never have been in B Company, might never have been on Snowdon East. The entire sequence of events trace back to one lieutenant's mistake. The irony is sharp. The officer who destroyed Bhanbhagta's career inadvertently put him in position to earn Britain's highest military honour. If Bhanbhagta had stayed in his original company as a Naik, he wouldn't have been in the lead section on March 5th. Someone else would have faced that sniper. Someone else would have charged those bunkers. The Victoria Cross would have gone to a different man, or not been awarded at all. Random chance. Wrong place, right time. 10 Gurkhas earned the Victoria Cross during the Second World War. Bhanbhagta was number 8. The first was Subadar Lal Bahadur Thapa in 1943 in North Africa. The last was Rifleman Bhanbhagta Gurung in May 1945, just 2 months after Snowdon East. Lakiman's action was even more extreme. Alone at a forward post, enemy grenade landed in his trench. He threw it back. It exploded, blew off his hand and fingers, partially blinded him. He kept fighting with his remaining hand for 4 hours, killed 31 Japanese soldiers, survived. That kind of bravery seems superhuman. It's not. It's desperation mixed with training and a refusal to quit. Lakiman couldn't retreat. Nowhere to go. Stay and fight or die. He chose to fight. Same calculation Bhanbhagta made. Different circumstances, same result. Survival against impossible odds. The Victoria Cross recognised both men, gave them pensions, made them famous in certain circles. But it couldn't change what they had endured to earn it. The Burma campaign killed 32,000 British and Commonwealth soldiers, wounded over 87,000 more. The Japanese lost even more. Estimates range from 150,000 to 200,000 dead, most from disease and starvation rather than combat. The war in Burma was a meat grinder that consumed entire divisions. Snowdon East was one hill among hundreds. The 66 dead Japanese were a statistical footnote in a campaign that killed thousands daily. But statistics don't capture individual experience. Bhanbhagta didn't fight for Burma or the British Empire or abstract concepts like freedom and democracy. He fought for the men in his section, for the soldier next to him who had shared rations yesterday, for the rifleman who had helped carry ammunition up the hill. That's what infantry combat reduces to. Protect your mates, complete the mission, survive if you can. Everything else is propaganda and politics. The 3rd Battalion's war diary from March 5th is clinical. Timed entries, grid coordinates, casualty reports. B Company attacked Snowdon East at 0900 hours. Encountered heavy resistance, secured objective by 1200 hours. 45 friendly casualties, estimated 66 enemy killed. The entry doesn't mention Bhanbhagta by name, doesn't describe the bunker assault. Just dry facts for the historical record. The human drama came later when officers wrote up the Victoria Cross recommendation. Modern military schools study Snowdon East in infantry training courses. The tactical problem is clear: fortified position, interlocking fields of fire, attacking force pinned down. Solution: aggressive individual action to suppress enemy fire and allow the main force to advance. Textbook stuff. What makes it remarkable is that Bhanbhagta executed the solution alone, without support, under continuous fire. Most infantry assaults require coordinated team action, fire and maneuver, covering fire, buddy rushes. Bhanbhagta just went. The Japanese defenders on Snowdon East were probably from a veteran unit. The 54th Division had fought in Burma since the invasion in 1942. They knew the terrain, knew how to build defensive positions. Their bunker was well constructed, concrete, good fields of fire, properly sighted. They had done everything right. They still lost because one Gurkha rifleman decided the bunker had to fall and made it happen. No amount of training or preparation can account for that level of individual determination. Which brings the story full circle. March 5th, 1945. A hill in Burma. A rifleman with a rock, the moment that defined Bhanbhagta Gurung's life and gave the Gurkhas another legend. But the real question isn't what happened that day, it's what it meant. Not just for Bhanbhagta, but for everyone who heard the story afterward, for Gurkha recruits at Catterick who walk past his name, for historians who study the Burma campaign, for anyone trying to understand what soldiers endure in combat and why some become heroes, while others just become casualties. The answer is waiting in what happened after Bhanbhagta went home. Bhanbhagta lived 63 years after Snowdon East, farmed his fields, raised his sons, watched grandchildren grow up. The Victoria Cross sat in a drawer most of that time. He didn't talk about the war much. Most veterans don't. What's there to say? He had done what needed doing and survived. The rest was just life. Plant rice, harvest crops, fix the terrace walls when monsoon rains washed them out. Simple work, honest work, the kind that doesn't make headlines. He visited England 3 times. Official ceremonies, regimental reunions. The Gurkha Museum opened in Winchester and invited him for the dedication. Each trip meant putting on his old uniform, pinning the Victoria Cross to his chest, shaking hands with officers and politicians who wanted to meet a living legend. Then back to Nepal, back to the quiet life he preferred. The story survived because it meant something, not just to the Gurkhas, not just to the British Army, to anyone who understands what it takes to stand up when everyone else is pinned down, to move forward when survival instinct screams to stay in cover. That's not about rocks or kukris or primitive weapons. It's about the decision one man makes in a moment of crisis. Do I act or do I wait? Do I risk everything or protect myself? Bhanbhagta chose to act 5 times that morning, each time expecting to die, each time surviving. The mathematics of courage Calculate the odds, ignore the calculation, do it anyway. That's what the Victoria Cross recognises. Not superhuman ability, not fearlessness, just the willingness to do what needs doing regardless of cost. Most recipients don't survive. Bhanbhagta did. That made him lucky and exceptional in equal measure. His son served, his grandson serves. The tradition continues, but none of them had to clear 5 Japanese positions alone. None faced the same test. Different wars, different enemies, different circumstances. The Second World War created conditions that forced ordinary men into extraordinary situations. Burma was one of the worst theatres. Jungle, disease, an enemy that fought to the death. The men who survived came home changed. Bhanbhagta was no exception. The asthma that killed him at 86 might have started in Burma. Smoke inhalation, tropical disease, poor nutrition during Operation Longcloth, or maybe just age. Lungs wear out, bodies fail. He lived longer than most Chindit veterans. Many died in their 50s or 60s, their health ruined by what they had endured. Bhanbhagta made it to 86, saw his great-grandchildren, died at home, surrounded by family. Better than dying in a bunker in Burma. The Gurkha Museum keeps history alive. School groups visit. Military historians study the displays. Veterans pay respects. The Victoria Cross sits in its case, polished and protected. A piece of bronze that represents one morning in March 1945 when a rifleman from Nepal decided a hill in Burma needed to be taken, and made it happen with whatever weapons he could reach. That's the real legacy. Not the medal, not the ceremonies, not the training facility named in his honour. The legacy is the example, the proof that one person can make a difference when it matters most. Bhanbhagta didn't set out to be a hero. He set out to keep his section alive and complete the mission. Everything else followed from that simple goal. The demotion never really mattered. The promotion back to Naik was symbolic. The honorary Havildar rank was a gesture. What mattered was March 5th, what he did when it counted. The rest was just paperwork and politics. The men who served with him knew his worth. That was enough. Rifleman Bhanbhagta Gurung, Victoria Cross, 3rd Battalion, 2nd Gurkha Rifles, born September 1921. Died March 1st, 2008, 86 years, 4 of them spent in uniform. 1 morning spent changing history. The rest spent living a quiet life that proved heroes don't need to be extraordinary every day. They just need to be extraordinary once. The rock wasn't primitive, it was practical. In that bunker, in that moment, with no room to swing a kukri, it worked. That's enough. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favour. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about Gurkha riflemen who cleared Japanese bunkers with rocks and knives and refused to quit when every instinct screamed run. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer, you're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Rifleman Bhanbhagta Gurung and the men of B Company don't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.